Hi everyone, Andrew from ActiveChat here, and welcome to yet another live session from Chatbot Academy. Please let me know in the chat for this event if you can hear me, and just introduce yourself and tell me how you're feeling. We'll be waiting a couple of minutes for those who can be late for the event, and we'll start pretty soon. And meanwhile, I would ask you to share your opinion which natural language platform you have been using before, if any. Please vote in the poll that you can see, starting in a couple of seconds. Thank you, Ken. Hi to Chicago, Singapore, Malaysia, Nuremberg, Israel, India. Perfect. Florida. Whole world is here with us tonight. Okay, so the topic for today's event is natural language chatbots. And first of all, I would like to dig for a moment into why actually do you need natural language in your chatbots. And the reason for this is quite simple. Actually, if you build chatbots that are controlled with buttons, with simple decision trees, this is not a chatbot. This is bots, and actually this is more like websites just put into a different interface. This is like a website put into Messenger where you have buttons instead of links, where you have quick replies instead of links, and actually your users cannot chat to your chatbot. So this mostly looks like an IVR system on the phone. Click 1 to go to this menu, click 2 to go to that menu, and so on and so forth. And actually what we at ActiveChat would like you to do is build conversations instead of chatbots. And conversation is something that engages human language, natural human language understanding, and we'll be discussing exactly this today. Natural language understanding chatbots are great because they provide natural and friendly user experience, and some of them can be actually useful to provide simple navigation in complex flows. We have a customer, a big e-commerce store, having tens of thousands of different items in the inventory, and the issue that the users of this customer were facing is that it was quite difficult to find specific items in this inventory. And introducing a natural language understanding chatbot did it a pretty simple task. The user just can tell what he or she is looking for, and the chatbot immediately sends the link or sends the product that the user requires. Then definitely chatbots are some kind of a personality that your business should be displaying to your customers. And chatbots that understand natural language can add to this personality, providing some small talk, providing some entertainment to users, and so on and so forth. Then, when you have complex flows, when you have complex conversations, if you use decision tree-based model, it can be quite difficult to add new skills to your chatbot. You have to think about navigation, where do you put links to around this skill, and so on. And if you are using natural language understanding, it can be as easy as adding an intent or two. And we'll be diving into what intents are quite soon. And then you have this wow effect that you can use to sell your chatbots to your customers. Actually, when you are displaying someone that a chatbot on Messenger can understand human language, can understand queries in regular human language, that produces this wow effect that can sell your bots quite quickly. And I have been experiencing this myself. Please let me know if this resonates with you somehow, and we will jump to the main dish of our meeting for tonight. And tonight we'll be talking about NLP basics. We'll be discussing intents, entities, and contexts, 3 whales that natural language understanding stands on. And then we will jump into some hands-on experience. As usual, we will check how we can use this in 2 platforms. We will be using Dialogflow tonight, and we will check how you can connect Dialogflow with ActiveChat bots, and how you can leverage Dialogflow artificial intelligence and machine learning to provide more value to your end users in your chatbots. Okay, perfect. Thanks for your feedback. Our event will take approximately, I expect it to have like maybe 45 to 50 minutes. I will provide some content, hopefully giving you some value, and then we'll have this Q&A session where I will try to answer the questions that you could have. I will be checking the chat for the event, but I can be missing some questions while I'm speaking, so feel free to repeat your questions in the end when we have these Q&A sessions. So basically, first and foremost, what is an intent? You have some examples for intents currently on your screen. What is the weather like? Get me pizza. I want to schedule a demo. Move your card, please, and so on and so forth. These are the things that your users can be telling to your chatbot, or not, maybe not to a chatbot, but to you in conversation. And intent is something that the user would like to achieve. When the user is asking what is the weather like, it's obvious that the intent is to know what is the weather. If the user tells get me pizza, the intent is to order pizza, obviously. If the user says I want to schedule a demo, the intent is to schedule a demo. And if the user says something like move your car, please, definitely the intent is to move someone's car somewhere. Where things get a little bit more complex is when you start to think about different ways that the specific intent can be expressed in. For example, the same utterances or the same wordings like get me pizza, may I have a pizza please, do you serve pizzas, I want to order pepperoni pizza, and so on and so forth. There can be tens and hundreds and thousands of different utterances for a specific intent. This all leads to the same intent. And actually, this is get me pizza intent. We can use modern technology, we can use machine learning, we can use artificial intelligence to dig into this and to use the power of Google and Facebook and IBM and Microsoft to do the heavy lifting for us. And actually, that was an approach that we took while designing ActiveChat. Some chatbot platforms rely on their own NLP engines. And we didn't want to do this. Why? Because we didn't find it useful to spend our time and effort to invest into designing something that is already designed, like inventing a wheel. So we decided to leverage the power of other systems like Dialogflow by Google, or Wit.ai by Facebook, or Watson by IBM, or Louis by Microsoft, and just provide a simple way to connect these systems to ActiveChat. So when any of your users say something like get me pizza, or may I have a pizza please, or do you serve pizzas, what Dialogflow, we'll be discussing Dialogflow tonight, what Dialogflow does is that Dialogflow detects the intent that is contained within this utterance. And then, okay, first, before we jump to more complex stuff, let's open actually the platform, the Dialogflow, and see how it works there. Please let me know in the chat if you can see my screen. It should be ActiveChat platform screen now. And I will move on. Dialogflow, you can reach it at dialogflow.com, is a natural language processing system from Google. And it's free for everyone. You can use it for free until you reach the threshold of 180 requests per minute. Basically, this is more than enough for an average chatbot. And if you have more users, if you have like hundreds of thousands of users bombarding your chatbot with natural language requests, then the costs are quite low. Why Google does this? Perhaps to collect as much user data as possible to improve machine learning algorithm. So you feel free to play around with this and check how it works for you. And in Dialogflow, what you have is so-called agents. Each agent is like a chatbot that you can connect to messenger channels right from Dialogflow, but actually it's better to do this in combination of Dialogflow and ActiveChat, and I will explain why a little bit later. You have this you have these agents, and you can easily connect new agent by clicking this button, Create New Agent. First, you give your agent a name. Let's say, okay, Bot Academy test. Pay attention that you cannot have spaces in your agent name. You have to replace spaces with underscores. And after some heavy lifting, after some machine learning, I get this basic agent that contains two basic intents. And these intents are, let's wait while Dialogflow prepares this for us. Please let me know, do you have issues with audio? Is anyone else having issues with audio? Just let me know. I'll try to fix maybe something. Okay, hopefully. Some people say it's good, some people... okay, if you have issues with audio, just try reconnecting or maybe refreshing your browser screen, your browser tab, and hopefully this will solve the issue. So, looking into the screen, back to Dialogflow, you have these two basic intents. You have default welcome intent and you have default fallback intent. And if you remember what we have been discussing on the last session about ActiveChat, you have exactly the same two skills in ActiveChat. You have start skill and you have default skill. And the idea is basically the same. Default welcome intent is something that is triggered when the user starts communicating to Dialogflow agent for the very first time. And default fallback intent is something that is triggered when the bot doesn't understand what the user said. We'll jump into this in a moment. So first of all, we have been discussing intents, so let's try to create an intent. I'll click this button, and we are giving the intent a name. Okay, what intent should we use? Okay, as a hello word in programming for chatbots, it's usually get me pizza. So we will be building this get me pizza intent. What you have to provide here, first of all, you have to provide these training phrases. I click add training phrases and I'll add something like, I want pizza, may I have pizza, and get me pizza. I click save. And then immediately I can test how this agent works here in the console for the Dialogflow. For example, when I say something like abracadabra, let's see what happens. The response is, I didn't get that. Can you say it again? And actually what happened here, you can see it here, the default fallback intent was triggered. The bot didn't understand what I said, so it was triggered, it triggered this default fallback. Okay, let's try something that we have taught our bot to do. Get me pizza. Okay, and you can see that the intent get me pizza was triggered. What is the use of this? Why don't we use regular keywords, and so why don't we use our switch block from ActiveChat to extract these intents? We can see something, we can try something more complex here. We can try, for example, may I have a pizza, please? And again, you can see that the same intent, get me pizza, was triggered. But if you go back to our training phrases, there is no may I have a pizza, please here. So actually what is happening here is that Dialogflow is using some machine learning to understand what the intent was. And we'll get back to this in a moment. If you are still with me, please let me know if this resonates with you, so I know that you are following me. Just let me know something in the chat. Okay, perfect. Now, let's get back to the presentation and discuss one more issue. Let's start digging deeper into these machine learning and natural language understanding. There is no much use if we just understand something like get me pizza. We would like to know what kind of pizza the user wants. And here we get something that is called entities. And entities is like variables, like values that the intent can contain. Examples you can see in your screen. What is the weather like in Toronto? And Toronto is marked in orange, and you can see that the intent is to know the weather, and the entity here is city for this weather. And actually the value of this entity is Toronto in this phrase. Then you can have get me pepperoni pizza with olives. You can see two words marked with orange here. And actually the intent is, again, get me pizza, but you have two different entities. You have pepperoni and you have olives. You have the type of pizza, pepperoni. It can be margarita, it can be anything else. And you have pizza extra, like olives or capers or anchovy and so on and so forth. Again, yet another example. I want to schedule a demo for tomorrow. And the intent here is the user wants to schedule a demo, and you have entity, a variable. It can be for tomorrow, for Friday, for 24th of May, for this weekend, and so on and so forth. And last example, move your car to the left, please. So definitely the intent here is to move the car, and entity is to the left, where the user wants to move the car. Yeah, sure, it could be chicken aloha pizza also. Okay, how do we use this? We'll jump into our Dialogflow agent in a couple of moments. But first, I would like to introduce something that is called entity types. And you have a couple of these in Dialogflow. There are two basic entity types in Dialogflow, and we'll be using this in our ActiveChat chatbots. There are system entities and there are custom entities. System entities are predefined by Google, by Dialogflow for specific use cases. And these entities are something like sys name, sys color, sys unit currency, sys date and number, and so on. And these entities can be used to easily extract the values from phrases that users are telling to your chatbot. And then you can have custom entities, and custom entities are defined by bot developers. You can say that you would like to have, for example, pizza type entity, and this pizza type can contain something like margarita, pepperoni, mushroom, 4 cheese, and so on. And you are pre-filling these values into the entity, and then Dialogflow will be using machine learning to understand like misspellings, typos and different wordings, and again for the same type of entity, for pizza type. And you can have almost anything as an entity. You can have product names, you can have product varieties, you can have memory size, you can have race, color, city, currency, measures, location, zip codes, countries, capitals, and so on and so forth. Let's jump to a specific use case, to a specific example. For example, getting back to our hello world example, get me pizza intent. We have been discussing the variation of this intent when the user says to your chatbot, get me pepperoni pizza with olives. And there are two entities here, and one is pizza type and another is pizza extra. These are the names that you can give yourself. You can use like pizza A or pizza B and so on and so forth. The name doesn't matter here. You just describe to Dialogflow that you have specific entities that can have specific values. And for example, pizza type entity again can contain pepperoni, margarita, Hawaii, 4 cheese, and so on. And pizza extra can contain olives, mushrooms, and capers. Let's jump back to Dialogflow and create another example. We will not be using custom entities for a moment. We'll stay with system entities to make it simpler. And for example, let's create another intent, and the intent will be to know the weather. And we call this intent weather. And the utterances for this intent would be, what is the weather like in London? What I do now, I double-click London, and I have this list of predefined system entities here. If I type city, I can see that there is a system entity called GeoCity, and I will use this. Then I will add another wording, for example, London weather. And again, I'm marking London as city entity. Okay, that should work for now. I'm saving this intent, go into console to test it, and I will ask Dialogflow something different. I have these two utterances here, what is the weather like in London and London weather. Show me weather in London. And you can see that machine learning detected that my intent was weather. And look here, we have parameter, entity, GeoCity, and the value is London. So it was detected automatically. Now, if I try something like weather in Toronto, please. Again, you can see I don't have these exact utterances. I don't have exact utterance weather in Toronto, please. I have London weather and what is the weather like in London. But Dialogflow detected it for me. It did all the heavy lifting, and the intent is weather, and the city to check the weather in is Toronto. Please let me know if you follow me, if you are still with me, and if you feel the power of Dialogflow and how easy you can use the machine learning and natural language understanding in your chatbots. We'll soon be jumping into how you can connect this to your active chat agent and how you can leverage the power of both the power of active chat platform and the power of Dialogflow to help you building awesome chatbots. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So let's see how it works with active chat, actually. What we'll do, we'll keep these two simple intents in our agent. And I remind you that we have get me pizza intent and we have weather intent. The only thing that I will do, I will change the entity name from GeoCity to city to make things more simple. Okay, I'll test it once more. Weather in, let's say, okay, weather in Kyiv. And the intent again was detected weather, and the city is Kyiv now. Now I'll go to active chat platform. I have the same chatbot that we have been building on the previous session, Bot Academy webinar bot. And this bot is already connected to our test page on Facebook. Let's see how it works. And currently this chatbot is empty. We have only start intent with this simple welcome message, and we have default intent, default skill, which is absolutely empty, contains nothing. Okay, let's find this. Okay, active chatbot academy is here. I'm restarting the bot. Type in /start. And we have this, hi, my name, welcome to Bot Academy. Perfect. Now let's go to bot settings here. Settings, integrations, Dialogflow. To connect our Dialogflow agent to active chatbot, we need something that is called Dialogflow API token. And if we go to our Dialogflow console, and if we click this settings for our agent, you have this developer access token here. We are using version 1 API currently. We'll be switching to version 2 quite soon, but currently version 1 API should work for you. I'm copying this developer access token, going back to my chatbot in active chat and pasting the token here. I click connect. And what happens now, you can see that the active chat fetched the intents from my Dialogflow agent, created events for each of these intents, and even detected that this weather intent have this entity, city. Let me show you it back in Dialogflow. If I go to intents, weather intent, and we have this entity here, city. Dialogflow calls the intents, Dialogflow is calling entities parameters. So parameters and entities are basically the same. Okay, how do we use this? Why do we need this? What do we need this for? Now we can go back to our chatbot and pay attention. We have skills, new skills created. We have this df weather, df get me pizza, df default welcome intent, and df default fallback intent. Don't pay attention to these different skills that I have here. It was left from our previous live session for Bot Academy. Currently, I'm interested only in df weather and df get me pizza. What I will do, I will go to df weather, and I'll put. First of all, let me explain you something. You can see that when we connected this Dialogflow agent to active chat created new skills in your chatbot for you. And then in each skill, active chat added this simple text block with NLP speech system variable. How do we use this? Actually, the NLP speech is something that you have in responses here in Dialogflow. And sorry for me not telling you this before. If I put a response is something that Dialogflow produces for you. For example, in our default fallback intent, if I go to default fallback intent, You can see that the responses are, I didn't get that, sorry, could you say that again, can you say that again, please, what was that, one more time, and all that kinds of stuff. And I can go to one of my intents, for example, get me pizza. And I will add text response here, okay, preparing your pizza. This is just a simple example to show you how it works. Definitely it will be much more complex in the actual chatbot. And if I go to weather intent that we created, I will add another text response here. Okay, checking weather in, and I will use this city entity value here. I click save. When I test this in Dialogflow console, weather in London, you can see that the default response here that is shown is okay, checking weather is London. So basically this is what I put here, okay, checking weather in the value of my entity. If I tell Dialogflow something like get me pizza, I get this default response, okay, preparing your pizza. Now let's see how it works in ActiveChat. This NLP speech variable will contain this default response from Dialogflow. Why did we do this? Because you may have your existing Dialogflow agents that already have some responses put into that. And you can use these agents easily with ActiveChat, just putting these responses to the user with this NLP speech variable. Okay. And let's check what happens in default fallback intent. Again, in default fallback intent, we are sending back this NLP speech variable to the user. How do we connect this agent? The only thing that is left to check is default skill. If you remember, default skill is something that is triggered when the user is sending a message to your chatbot on your Facebook page or on Telegram or on SMS, on Twilio, and so on. And what we did for you when you connected your Dialogflow agent, we added this NLP block to the default skill. And basically everything that this block does is using Dialogflow to check for intents in the user's message. Basically, when we connect NLP block to default skill, we say, okay, Google, okay, Dialogflow, this is what we have from our chatbot user. Please check this and tell me if you detect any intents in this. And what will happen next, if any of these intents is triggered, then the specific skill that we have created for you will be triggered. Okay, enough words. I'm running the bot now. I'm going to this page on Messenger, and I will try something like abracadabra. What happens? I have this story, I didn't get that. Can you rephrase? Pay attention, we don't have this in default skill. In default skill, we are sending the user's message, this last user input system variable, to Dialogflow with NLP block. And Dialogflow tells us, okay, this was default fallback intent. And then this default fallback skill is triggered in ActiveChat, and we are sending NLP speech response from Dialogflow to the user. Does it make sense? If you are following me, just let me know. I know that this can be quite complex for the beginners, but I expect this to be quite simple for those of you who use ActiveChat. So just let me know, please, in the chat if you have any questions on this. Why do we do this? Okay, currently we are just sending the responses from Dialogflow to our ActiveChat. Let's do some more tests. For example, weather in London. And you have this response from Dialogflow, okay, checking weather in London, and maybe get me pizza again. Okay, preparing your pizza. So it looks like we have this sweet pair, this Dialogflow and ActiveChat working perfectly together. Why did we use this, and why did we introduce Dialogflow to ActiveChat? The basic idea behind this was to bridge the gap between two different approaches to chatbot development. And these two approaches, as described in our previous live session, is that first you can have decision tree-based chatbots that most of you are used to. These are bots with buttons, bots with quick replies, and so on. And these bots are like IVR systems. And you can have natural language understanding chatbots that like a free flow conversation, free flow natural language understanding. And we tried to bridge the gap between these two different approaches. And how we achieve this in ActiveChat is that we are using Dialogflow or any other NLP engine, like we'll be adding WIT-AI soon, and Lewis and Watson and so on. We use this to detect the intent, and then we are using one of our existing bot skills to lead our chatbot user to a specific value, to bring specific value. And then you can use buttons, you can use conversation trees, conversation flows, different branching in conversation, checking with switches, and so on and so forth. What can we do more complex here? Okay, we will remove, for example, in this weather intent, in this weather skill, we will delete this text block, and we will say something like, okay, weather, temperature or humidity. And then we will add two buttons here, like temperature and humidity. And then each of these buttons can be triggering a specific flow in our chatbot, specific skill or specific set of blocks and so on. Currently, we'll just use some small test. You can be calling APIs with JSON block here or do anything that you would like to. It's like conversational design. For temperature, okay. Checking temperature, and for humidity check. I will run the bot now. Go back to Messenger. Weather in New York. And you can see that the intent tell me whether in specific city was triggered, but then this intent triggered a skill in ActiveChat. And now we have this skill like, okay, weather, temperature, or humidity. And what's great about ActiveChat and Dialogflow integration is that you can use variables. And the variable, if you remember, we have this entity value in Dialogflow. We have city parameter here. And we can use this parameter here in ActiveChat immediately. We can use, we'll say, okay, checking temperature in, and then we'll use system variable, NLP, entity, city. And we'll add the same to humidity check in NLP, entity, city. Makes sense? I'm running the bot again, going to Messenger, and telling something like weather in Toronto. Click in temperature. And you can see that checking temperature in Toronto was fetched, this city value was fetched from Dialogflow through this NLP entity city system variable. If it makes sense, please again let me know in the chat, and we will switch to contacts, another quite important thing in chatbot development. Yes, Holger, this variable NLP entity is automatically created for me from Dialogflow. Yes, exactly. We create system variables for every entity that you have in Dialogflow, and you can check this. You can go to settings, you can go to integrations, and you see these entities here. For every entity listed here, you will have a variable in ActiveChat, NLP entity, and then this entity name. Great question, Vitaly. What if there are two cities mentioned in the same line? What will happen here is that Dialogflow, you can create an entity. Please pay attention to this checkbox, is list. You can say that city is a list. If I click save now, and if I in console say something like weather in Toronto and Auckland, you can see that instead of one city, we now have this parameter city equals to Toronto and Auckland, and this is a list. Actually, we do not support this in our Dialogflow to ActiveChat integration yet, but it will be quite soon. By the end of March, you will have completely different data structures in ActiveChat, and you will have all these complex objects, lists, and objects with fields, and so on and so forth. Then it will be supported. Currently, we support just the plain values. So you better, if you use Dialogflow with ActiveChat, you better uncheck this and use this not as a list. Okay, getting back to the presentation, thank you everyone for your feedback. I do appreciate this. One more quite complex question. Please pay attention to the conversation that we are having here between a user and the chatbot. What time is it in New York now? It's 11 a.m. there. And what is the weather? User asks. And the bot replies, it's sunny and warm. And then the user asks, what about London? And the bot says, it's raining now there. How does the bot know what was the user question? What about London? It doesn't contain any reference to weather or time or anything like this. And then the user is asking, and the time is, and bot says it's 4 p.m. in London. How does the bot know that the question was about London? And here we are using something that is called contexts. And context is like a system variable that lets your chatbot have something like a memory, the memory about the conversation that the user is having with a chatbot. Pay attention to these orange and red lines to the right. When the user starts speaking to the chatbot, what time is it in New York now? We're talking about New York. So we can set the city context to New York. Then we are replying with it's 11 a.m. We are providing some value to the user. And then the user is asking, and what is the weather? Dumb bot, a simple chatbot, will not understand this. He will ask, what is the weather where, in which city? But we can remember that the last question from the user was about New York, so we don't have to ask the user again. So we are just switching to another intent. We are switching to weather intent instead of time intent. But we keep in mind that we were talking about New York, and we provide the weather in New York. It's sunny and warm. And then we have another context. Now we're talking about the weather instead of time. So we can introduce another context, and it will be weather. And when the user asks us, what about London? We know that the current context is weather, but the city is now changed to London. So we are just providing data about London, and the weather of London, as usual, it's raining there in London. And we're talking about weather still, but the city context is London now. And then the user changes her mind again and asking, and the time is. And the bot knows automatically that we are still speaking about London, because the user didn't mention another city, but now the intent is to know the time. So quite a simple example, and pay attention that there are two different types of context in this simple example, and real conversations can get much more complicated. This example was actually something that we have been discussing with our developers, with Roman, our CTO, quite a lot. We have been trying to invent something, some framework that would allow you to achieve these complex contexts and complex entities and complex intents in your chatbot, not sacrificing the simplicity of the chatbot. And I have a feeling that we managed to achieve this, and I will show you how to do this in a moment. I can take like 5 minutes to answer your questions before we jump to actual implementation of these complex contexts and more complex agents in actual chatbot. And we'll take approximately 10 minutes more for this. It's quite simple in ActiveChat, and we'll see how it works. Yes, great question. Do we go to ActiveChat YouTube channel? Yes, it would be great to if you could. And please, if you are still not subscribed to us on YouTube, just follow the link that you have in the chat now and subscribe to us on YouTube. Okay. Looks like no questions currently. So let's jump to another agent that we have both in ActiveChat and in Dialogflow. Are you going to show it pulling the weather live? Not actually. It's quite a different topic, and this is API access with JSON block, and we'll have a specific Bot Academy session on this. Let me remind you that next session is about bots for e-commerce, and in a week after this, we'll have this JSON and API and more complex development stuff. But currently, I will not be diving into this. We are still on quite a complex topic today. Okay, so let's jump to another agent here, and I have it pre-made for you, not to waste your time now on the webinar. I'll just disconnect this Bot Academy webinar bot from my Facebook page. I go to messengers, I click disconnect from ActiveChat Bot Academy, and I'll jump to another agent, bots. And this Bot Academy to NLP. And I will go to settings and connect it immediately to the same page. Messengers, Bot Academy, connect. And we have another agent in Dialogflow for this. And we have this Bot Academy NLP 1. We have, first of all, let's dive into this agent in Dialogflow. As you can see, we have this default intents like default fallback and default welcome. And we have 3 more intents here. We have temperature intent that will react to utterances like London temperature, London weather, weather in London, what's the temperature in London, and so on and so forth. And we have this entity or parameter called city of geo-city type. And then we have another intent that is called time. And this intent will be triggered by phrases like London time, time in London, what time is it in London now, and so on. And again, we have the same parameter, city, of geo-city type. And then we have yet another simple intent, city. This will be used just to change the context between different cities. And this intent will be triggered by phrases like London, please, can you check London, now London, how is London, what about London, or maybe just London, and so on. And let me remind you that you can use almost every city name here, and it will be detected automatically by Dialogflow for you. Let's see how it works in Dialogflow. Weather in Moscow. You can see that the detected intent was temperature, and the city is Moscow. Time in Toronto. Detected intent is time, and the city is Toronto. So far, so good. And let's try something like London. And you can see that the intent is city, and the parameter is London. So this works perfectly here. I'll grab this API key to connect this to ActiveChat agent. Go back to ActiveChat. And let's see what we have in this agent in ActiveChat. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. We have this start skill. First of all, hold on for a moment. I'll check the connection with Dialogflow. Yeah, looks like we have it in place. Just to make sure, I click refresh intents. Yep. Everything seems to work nicely, and I go back to the bot and click run. First of all, let's see how it works on Messenger. I'll restart the bot, because this is another bot connected to the same page. And the bot is asking me, okay, time or weather? I'm in London, please. The bot says check in time in London and send some API request. I didn't include this specific API request here. This is just for illustration purposes to show you how it works. Okay, so we know that the bot is currently checking time in London. I tell the bot, what about weather? And now you can see that the bot switched to checking temperature in London. This is different intent, but the city is still London. Checking temperature in London, and if I say Toronto, please. The bot is checking temperature in Toronto now. What about time? And we are now checking time in Toronto. What looks like a magic. Yes, we have this pretty simple chatbot that works with contacts. And let's see how it works in our agent in ActiveChat. How much is Dialogflow? Dialogflow is free until you reach 180 requests per minute. And this is enough for a small chatbot. Okay, what we do here? I'll take 5 minutes to explain, and then I will jump to your questions. We have this start skill, we have default skill, and we have these skills for time, temperature, and city intents from Dialogflow. In our start skill, we are resetting some system variables. We say that current contacts equals none, and current city equals none. Why do we do this? To initialize these variables, so that when the user starts communicating to the bot for the very first time, the bot doesn't know neither what is the intent nor what is the city that the user would like to talk about. And the bot is asking something like, okay, time or weather. Suppose that the user says, okay, tell me time in London. We go to time skill, and you can see that first of all, we're setting this current context to time, so that the bot knows that we are speaking about time. And then we're checking NLP entity city value to see if the user provided a specific city to work with. Let me show you how it works if I restart the bot here. Time or weather. I tell time, please, but I do not specify the city, and the bot is asking me what is the city. Toronto. And now the bot is checking time in Toronto. How it works in ActiveChat? We're checking if we already know the city. If not, then we set current city to none and ask, we check if the current city is none, and then we're asking what is the city. But if we know the city, or if the city was provided in the user's input, then we set in current city to NLP entity city value, and then we're sending this check-in time in current city and doing some API requests here. And for temperature, it's completely the same. We set current context to weather. We check if we received city name from user's input, and we do the same. If we don't have the current city, then we ask what is the city, and if we do have current city, then we're just checking temperature in current city. And city intent is also quite simple. We check if the city was detected by Dialogflow, because sometimes, for example, if I say something like abracadabra city, then Dialogflow will not know what the city is. And we have to ask the user, sorry, I didn't understand what is the city. But if we have this value from Dialogflow, then we set current city to be equal to NLP entity city to the entity value. And then we're just checking the current context variable. And if the current context is time, then we trigger time intent skill. And if the current context is weather, then we're triggering temperature skill. And if we do not have current context set, if we don't know if the user is asking about time or about temperature, we're just asking again time or weather. So you can see 3 simple skills, and each skill containing maybe less than 10 blocks. And we have managed to build quite a powerful bot that can use natural language and can understand context and keep some memory of the conversation, and actually be pretty useful. If this makes any sense to you, please let me know, and I'll be ready to jump into Q&A session with your questions to help you with this. And just let me know if you find this useful and you feel like we are providing some value to you. Can we use Dialogflow to read data from Google Sheet? No, this is different services. You can use JSON API to use to fetch data from Google Sheets. And actually next week we will be releasing our native blogs for Google Sheets integrations, and I'll have an update on Facebook community for this. By the way, if you are still not with us on Facebook, please join us. Just click the button to join. The community is great. The community is very friendly. I appreciate everyone who is participating. So just join us. Okay, thanks so much for your feedback. So 5 to 10 minutes to answer your questions. And I think we are done for today. One more question. While I'm waiting for your questions, one more simple poll for you. Please take your time to answer. First of all, do you think that chatbots need natural language understanding? Yeah, I understand that this is can be quite complex if you are just starting. But again, this is the reason why we set up this Chatbot Academy. We want you to not build chatbots. We want you to build actual conversations, and we want you to build conversations that bring actual value. We would like to change the landscape of chatbots instead of these simple IVR chatbots, button control chatbots, and these website chatbots like with buttons instead of links and so on. We want you to develop actually great chatbots that can understand natural language, that can serve your users, and that can be naturally chatbots and not just the bots. What if Dialogflow will not support in my native language? Currently, Dialogflow supports 23 or 25 languages. And I think they will be adding more soon. And we'll soon add WIT.ai from Facebook, and WIT.ai supports more languages. Some of the events had multiple responses. What happens then? Does it do random picks? Yeah, exactly. What Dialogflow does for you, if you have multiple responses there, then a random one is picked. Can we do a short tutorial on Twilio SMS? Yeah, definitely. This is something that is requested much, and actually we have just added a pretty nice feature when you start conversation, for example, on Facebook, and you get a phone number from your user on Facebook. You can send this phone number to your chatbot and then send messages to this phone number with Twilio account immediately. And I will explain how to do this. I will post this short tips for ActiveChat. I will record this new video by the end of this week. For human takeover, we still do not have it, and we expect to have live chat and human takeover in March. For WIT.ai integration, I expect this to be around the end of April, maybe. Currently, we're pretty happy with Dialogflow, and actually you can achieve almost everything that you would like to with Dialogflow instead of WIT.ai, and the only difference is the languages that it supports. Ben, I'm not sure I understand the question. Will this be in the help center? Yeah, it definitely will be. Training videos provided to paying customers, which seems like a bait and switch from the AppSumo people who paid for the lifetime plan. Actually, that's what we're doing with this Bot Academy. We're providing free education for our customers and for those who come from AppSumo. Will we be going over integration with Twilio? Yeah, I definitely will be. Signalware is another option to Twilio, 90% less expensive. Actually, we have a request from a Telmetrics company in the United States to add their integration, and we'll be implementing Telmetrics first, and then we'll switch to other providers too. Do you have a public list of your upcoming sprints, releases, and dates? Yes, we have a public roadmap. You can have you can find a link on the website. Can you explain how can I use it for a restaurant in just a few words? Quite simple. You can have intents for making order, reserving a table, providing information about the restaurant, and so on. For example, you can have intent, I want to make a reservation, and the entities will be date, time, and the number of people. Then you can have another intent for, I would like to make a delivery order, and the entities will be the food type and the shopping cart. So this is some use cases that I can invent for the restaurant natural language understanding chatbot. Can we have templates or create our own templates for skills? Yes, template library for skills is in the works, and we will have it, I think, maybe by the end of February or in the first week of May. On the first week of March. Chatbot agency template, yeah, I'm still missing this, and I still didn't catch up on this. I will work on this week, and hopefully release it by the weekend. Ziad, sorry for the delay here. Okay, so please let me know if you like the content, if it was useful for you, if you obtained some value, some insights from the content. And see you soon on the next Bot Academy sessions. And let me remind you that the next session will be on chatbots for e-commerce. How to make product galleries, how to make orders, how to accept payments, and how to use conversational commerce to sell bots to your agents, to your customers. Perfect, much appreciated. Дякую. Thank you, Vitaly. Okay, so it looks like we managed to pack quite a complex issue, quite a complex content in less than 1 hour. And actually, I like it. So please now feel free to go to Dialogflow, to go to ActiveChat, to connect these two together and play around with it and reach out to me with any questions, with any difficulties, with any issues that you can help. Don't forget to ask your questions and to post your questions in our Facebook community. And thank you so much for taking your time to come today. Thank you so much for your awesome support. And thank you so much for rating us and reviewing us on Capterra, on G2 Crowd, and on our community. Thank you. See you soon. And please stay tuned to our upcoming sessions.